my practice, like what I'm able to do ethically, right? That means that I am able to provide therapeutic services, one-on-one sessions, group sessions, things like that. I am able to have conversations as far as like consulting, mental health consulting. That's something I'm able to do. That is psychoeducation. So that's like really what my bag is. And psychoeducation means educating people as relates to things of the matter of the mind and like mental health and things like that. That's all underneath that umbrella. So the whole self-care brand, that idea, initially it was the thought around like trying to just change the conversation around mental health in general. But even more so than that, it's to educate people. Like, that's really what my thing is. If I had to have pillars that I picked for Purpose Joy, it would be community, education, and identity. I feel like if I can give you a sense of like community, I can give you a sense of like education, and we can help you redirect your identity, we can really kind of like change the whole sauce trajectory of our culture. So that's like, where that comes from.
Yeah. I'm glad to be here with you right now, because the whole purpose of Ideas Inspire Information is to activate your mind. I often say that the mind isn't a terrible thing to waste. The mind is a terrible thing to not use, because your mind can't be wasted. It's always working. The only time that you can actually qualify somebody's mind not working as being brain dead. But then if you go into different realms of like thought processes, the mind really isn't dead at that point. It's just to the outside world it would be. So I want to get into like the self-care of your mental patterns for men and women. How do those two things like coincide with each other? Because we're different humans, so we see things, perceive things, and feel things differently, being different genders. So how does that look for a woman versus a man? What are like the two biggest differences you've seen there?
So, great question, but I'm gonna preface this by saying that what I've learned, I never fully understood like the whole spectrum aspect of us and our experiences, and how impactful gender roles have to play as it relates to men and women, as opposed to specifically the gender you're like assigned, if that makes sense. But what happens is, I think that there's an expectation. It's almost to let me see, how do I put this? The expectation to perform as blank. So when you're a woman, based off of what your social background is and like encounters and things like that you've had, there's an expectation to perform as blank. And so that might be an expectation to perform as a mother, an expectation to perform as a nurturer, an expectation to perform as an independent person, somebody who's independent, an expectation to perform as somebody that's submissive. So those things play like an ongoing thing. The same thing happens for men, though. There's expectation to perform as blank. So expectation to perform as a provider, expectation to perform as as someone who has it all together, expectation to perform as a rock, like where nothing can break you. Those things. And so the danger of that, and again, gender is such a huge spectrum and things like that around in so many different areas and avenues that you could take with that. But it really is dependent upon that person's expectation of themselves or how they're supposed to show up based off of how they identify. And so the complicated part comes into, one, you have to give a person room to explain how they identify. You might be a person that identifies as male, right? But that definition for me and that definition for you could be something completely different based off of how you were brought up and all those other kind of things, all those other influences. So what a bigger part of any of it is to allow people the space to explain their identity and allow people the space to explain, well, this is their perspective. You know what I'm saying? And then after we kind of understand that part, their perspective, their identity, then we can kind of get to a point of like, okay, so I see where you're at. I can gauge that and we can go from there. But it's not, I guess the point I'm trying to make is that its root, despite gender or gender identity, it's a matter of how they perceive themselves, and then making sure that you're taking practice to allow people the space to grow from that part, from that space. I can't assume that because you're a man, you're not in tune with, you're a man, you're not in tune with your emotions. I can't assume that. I can't assume that because you're a woman, you are very in tune with yours. I can't assume that. I have to give you room to like show up in whatever way you identify, and then we kind of go from there.